Hello and welcome. And today I'm talking with Trisha, and we're going to be talking all about trauma-informed practice with children. And so, welcome, Trisha. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Jules, for having me.
So, would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself? And also, if it feels comfortable, leading into how you came to be creating the course, because I know that you've got an exciting course coming up. So,
We
off you.
do. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm Patricia Madalena. I'm here in Wales in the UK. And I founded Wigglebums, well, co-founded Wigglebums and Wiggle Kids with my sister Claire, who founded Lush Tums, pregnancy and postnatal and antenatal education. Um, and so I think historically, my day job, as it were, is I'm a therapist since 2004. So for 20 years, come this summer, I've been working mainly with trauma. And we were kind of 2017 was when Claire founded Lush Tums. No, 2007. And we had families right up to babies until they were crawling, and then they were gone. So it was their pregnancy and their postnatal classes that they'd come to. And we just realised that we were missing this real massive opportunity to support the young families within our community. So my sister and I hatched this plan, and Wigglebums was born. But we're not just a kids yoga teacher training. We kind of incorporate both the trauma-informed practices, the positive psychology techniques, the yoga, the mindfulness. We really are bringing the mind-body link together, and we're on this mission, if you like, to help raise the next generation of empowered and resilient individuals. So basically, they don't have to come to my sessions when they're adults. And in the kind of, I do like the mindfulness and meditation and the positive psychology side of things, and my sister Claire does the yoga side of things. And we've got 6 teacher trainings now on offer. It's kids yoga 2 to 12, and then teen yoga 13 to 18, which is a jam-packed teacher training. Both of those all not just about yoga and yoga history and philosophy, but also the mind and psychology of that, of being a child. And also we've got a huge module for children with additional needs. But since the COVID pandemic, we've seen this mental health crisis, haven't we, emerge. And I know in London, they've got like a 3-year wait list for CAMS. So we've got this deficit that's happening. And to help that just a little bit, we've decided to put our heads together, and we've created this trauma-informed practice called Empower and Heal course. And this course, it's for anyone really who works with the public in any way, but especially kids yoga teachers and kids mindfulness teachers. And I feel right now, I mean, we always had to, we were always firefighting pre-COVID, but now we definitely need to take on the presupposition that everyone who comes to our class is carrying some kind of trauma with them, so that we can create a stable, safe and supportive environment for their experience of our class whenever we can. So that's why we've created Wigglebums, as it were, because we saw that there was this gap. We're not just an ordinary kind of kids yoga teacher training. We really encompass that trauma-informed practice, positive psychology approach.
I
So
love
yeah.
that. I love that, and it's so aligned with my beliefs too, because I really, well, my background is in education, so I come from it from a different angle, and I also have a master's in mental health and wellbeing in education, and I have a huge interest in neuroscience and in our bodies, the body brain connection, and it's not a silo, is it? It's not like, oh, here we can remove our bodies and that's separate. It's everything is connected, and I'm really really interested. That's kind of one of my real areas of interest is how our bodies and brains work together to keep us safe. And that's, you know, it's something that I'm always talking about in my trainings too. And so I'm really pleased to have you here today to tell us all about your course and all about all about trauma informed practice, because I feel like it's actually really lacking everywhere is lacking in understanding of it. And I think a lot of people have this kind of misconception that for you to be traumatized, or for you to have an experience in trauma, that you must have had something really horrific happen to you, otherwise you can't have experienced trauma. And I feel like that's a really big misunderstanding. And what's your thoughts on that? What does the word trauma mean to you?
So I agree, completely 100% agree. For me, it's an experience or an event that overwhelms a child's ability to cope. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that will leave a massive impact on their physical, emotional, mental well-being right the way through to adulthood for years and years to come. We do think that trauma is like, you know, a big, you know, on the scale of trauma is, you know, and a big abuse, something massive must have happened. Some kind of neglect, some kind of loss, some kind of violent, traumatic occurrence, like a single event. But we also have trauma that can be repeated exposure to traumatic events that can happen day in, day out. So as a therapist, you know, constant blaming, constant shaming, constant criticizing, belittling and punishing on a day-to-day basis can create trauma. And it's our response to that that's the trauma.
Yeah.
And that in turn then goes on to create a negative mindset. You've heard the positive growth mindset. You also can create a negative mindset,
Yeah.
which is the direct result of the labels and projections we were exposed to as children.
Yeah.
You know,
I really like, sorry, I really like the term trauma with a big T and trauma with a little t. This idea of like you can have these, you know, singular events that were really traumatic and or, you know, consistently traumatic, like abuse or those things, but you can also have this, you know, trauma with a little t, which is like you were saying about, you know, the ongoing. And I think many people who are neurodiverse will have had that trauma with a little t and won't even know that, won't even be aware of it, because it's just the way that they were interacting with people on a day-to-day basis.
but that's part of, I think, part of the thing that Wigglebums brings to the table is bringing this awareness on how our language and how we and our verbal cues and our tone, the tonality of those cues and our facial expressions as parents. So our children are picking up on tonality even before we've said anything.
Yeah.
And that will create a fight or flight, freeze or fawn scenario in them, depending on the child, which then in turn, you know, as a domino effect, will create that kind of push pull, maybe fighting, shouting, punishment, stick carrot scenario that goes on probably in every household. But
Yeah.
what that
And
does,
mistakenly gets called bad behavior, you know.
yes,
It's like I always feel like a lot of the things that I talk about with people who I'm mentoring, and it's about, you know, oh, we're dealing with the behavior, we're managing the behavior, and it's actually that's not what we're doing. We need to understand underneath the behavior what's going on. This child's trying to be safe, and their behavior is showing you that they're not safe. And so it's understanding all of those layers underneath, isn't it, which is so important. And I feel like as a society we just ignore it. It's like we all just look at the surface and don't even consider that there's other stuff going underneath. It's like you're not playing the game, you're not doing what's expected. What can we do to fix you? When actually it's quite often understanding that child and understanding what's going on for them.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because when a child hasn't got the language to convey the enormity of what their experience is. I was I'm in one of the Facebook groups, you know, and the mum had posted something about their child, 7-year old's behavior and what could it be. And the 99.9% of every response was really that there was something wrong with the child. There was something wrong with either their what they're eating, what they're you know, maybe they need magnesium, maybe they need this, you know, rather than that the child's working perfectly
Mm.
given the relationship of the life experience. Every single person works perfectly in relation to their life experience. So
Yeah,
when we're looking at bad behavior, I like to then discuss, well, what's going on in the environment? What is really happening in the environment for that child to be presenting in that way? They don't have
yeah.
the language to tell you. And even if they have told you, you're adults and they have no control over that situation. So,
Yeah, and many times they don't even know it's happening. It's their body is reacting, their nervous system is telling them, I'm not safe here and I've got to do something about that.
mm,
And we're all trying to look at it from adults in, oh, well, they're not doing this. And it's just, yeah, the information needs to be shared, I
mm.
think.
I think the
What do
bottom,
you,
yeah,
sorry, carry on.
no, I was just thinking like the bottom line, the amygdala's up, they're firing on all cylinders, they're presenting in a myriad of different behaviors from, you know, tapping and ticking to screaming to shouting to hitting their brother or sister or whatever.
Or
Um,
shutting down,
or
completely
shutting down,
shutting down.
imploding, not speaking. Yeah, correct. You know, and it's like the
Mm,
bottom line is they're not feeling safe.
yeah,
That's it. They don't feel safe. So how can we create an environment within which they feel safe? And if they're not feeling safe within the family unit, then 100% probably the parents aren't feeling safe within that family unit either.
yeah.
um and then but with all of that we're just living day to day, we're creating belief mindset, aren't we, of I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not likable, nobody, you know, I'm the lazy one, I'm the one that, you know, ruins family holidays, you know, and that becomes the inner voice, that becomes their inner critic, doesn't it? And that
Mm,
becomes who they are. And then especially in schools, you know, teachers then write the report for the next teacher, and the teacher is looking at that child through those sets of glasses. So I don't know about you, but in school when they give you a little list of the child that you need to be watching out for or the children that need to be watching out for tend to be the ones that are the best. And it's
yeah.
like, wow, you know, because there's that expectation is leading belief around their ability and what they can do and what they're likely to do and things like that, doesn't it? And it's like the more we
Yeah.
can get our work into schools and nurseries to pop those belief bubbles, the better, because
Yeah,
those children are the ones that tend to excel in our classes.
definitely, definitely. In fact, I had a teacher say to me the other day that she was it's just a throwaway comment, but when you're just like, that's very telling. She said, oh, I think they're doing really well in yoga, aren't they? And I was like, yeah, I'm amazed at how much they remember from like last year and actually the year before. And I've been working with this particular school for 3 years. I was like, amazing that they could remember such and such from a few years ago. And she was like, yeah, it's incredible because they don't remember anything from what we're teaching in the lessons. They don't remember what we did last week. And you're just like, uh
Mm.
maybe that tells you something.
Yes.
Maybe a change of approach, or it's just, but that's no judgment on the teacher. It's just how education is. And I feel like there's a lot of real problematic situations happening in education and in schools in general. But why do you feel like oh, actually, I didn't ask you this. What do you think trauma-informed practice is? Because actually, I think we're talking about it because we know and understand it, and there's a certain level of assumption happening. But there's probably people watching who don't actually know what trauma-informed practice is,
Yeah.
or any, yeah. Talk to
So
that a bit.
I think we've got like there's two elements, isn't there? We've got trauma aware and trauma informed, because we're all trauma aware. We are aware that there is trauma. And we've got that basic understanding, haven't we, that that there is trauma and there is traumatic events in the world. we might not dig right down deep to those kind of ongoing little T traumas. We might
Yeah.
have just kind of resided in the big T traumas. I really
Yeah,
like.
it's like, that's like, so if you come to a class and the teacher says, oh, by the way, that child's just that, I had it a few days ago, that child's father died a few weeks ago, you'd be very aware of that kind of trauma.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't necessarily be aware of another child who had something rumbling on that
Yeah.
wasn't picked up.
Which we all take as typical. Mums and dads shout, mums and partners shout, dads and partners shout. This happens. The big siblings, we family dynamics. Family dynamics. It's a soup, isn't it? So we don't know really what who's coming to our mat with what. So I just think it's great to just have this as a trauma-informed practice. Also, it ought to be in schools, just as a for teachers, like anybody in public who teaches or does anything with the public, really should start developing a more trauma-informed practice. So trauma awareness is having that basic understanding that there's trauma out there, and there can be behavior and kind of emotional dysregulation and physical symptoms, and we can be mindful of that. But the trauma-informed practice goes deeper. It does a really big deep dive in understanding trauma and its impact in the nervous system, its impact in brain development, its impact in social settings, emotional well-being, and it kind of goes down deep into the root cause of these behaviors. And it recognizes like these seemingly unrelated responses that children can have, like outbursts and withdrawal or difficulty concentrating in school, and it puts them together. It connects them. It can connect them to past traumatic events. And we're quite easy nowadays. It's quite easy to think, oh, my child might have ADHD, or my child might have something, and be going down that route. A lot of the symptoms are similar. Some of the symptoms are similar, so it can be quite challenging to navigate without having the full picture. And I really like, and I hope that they're looking at the full picture of what's happening within the child's whole cosmology, if you like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so trauma informed, it looks at, so if you had a trauma informed practice, you'd be looking at creating a really safe environment, that's safe, that's trusted, that's empowering. So that could be physical environment, it could be making sure that no stranger could just walk in through the door, having if you're doing a course of 6 weeks, I like to keep the people that have signed up. No one can, and no one can come into my course until that 6 weeks is over, because that might overstimulate or re-traumatize someone. I like to keep it, safe and bounded. You're kind of offering autonomy. So within your class, you're creating clear boundaries. You have a really good use of trauma-informed language and hands-off cues, hands-off verbal cues. That's really, really important. Being able to kind of access that in a toolbox with anyone that comes to your mat, regardless of background or anything. It's just, yeah, having that hands-off verbal cue thing, I think, is really super important. So yeah, you're kind of creating a safe environment. You've got your trauma sensitive approaches, tools and techniques going on. You've got your trauma informed language, which in the course we look at both trauma informed language, how it's vital for the role of all children, but especially teens. But we also look at direct commands, and we look at direct commands, clean language, and trauma informed language as a fusion. And that's a really interesting tool to have, to be able to use, to be able to call on as and when needed with the different kinds of children that will come to your mat. Yeah, so then you can integrate that into your practice, really. So you'll be able to then also have be able to provide different poses for kids, for teens and kids. You'll be able to provide props and supports. Breath awareness is really key.
Yeah, because that can be quite a trigger, can't it? Breathing can be a real trigger for many people who have got trauma, especially people who've got PTSD.
Exactly. Is there any kind of interoceptive connection or experience or exploration can be re-traumatizing for anyone. And
Yeah.
just, we're very quick to go, oh, let's do a meditation, let's do some breathing, let's do some bunny breath, and actually it can really re-stimulate trauma that's stuck in the various parts of
Yeah.
the body.
Yeah.
Just
And I
being
think many of us yoga teachers would have experienced this ourselves. I definitely, in my own practice, will be doing something, and then all of a sudden I'm crying because I've done a hip opener. I'm like, what? Whoa. Shifting something from, a long time ago. We all, there's that wonderful book, isn't there, about the body keeping the score? And it's so true. And, we see it in our classes all the time.
And also, a lot of the time, I say this with all, whether, because we do mindfulness for adults as well, mindfulness teacher training, just purely for, go off and teach adults. And it's like, whether you're a child or an adult, it might be the very first time that you've ever, shut your eyes in a room full of people and feel safe about that. And a lot of time, children, well, they don't shut their eyes, they think they have. But they haven't. So having a prop is really handy and really good, so that they're either focusing on something
Yeah.
in the middle of the room or focusing on something in their hands. But what do you do when someone is triggered in your class? So that's something that we cover quite extensively in the course. It's like, well, what do you do if someone is re-stimulated? How do you manage that? You might have, 10 kids, 30 children, you might have. How do you manage that? And also your remit, you're a yoga teacher, you're a mindfulness teacher, you're not a therapist, you're not a practitioner.
Yeah.
What's your remit? Where do you come up against the edges of that? And then what do you do about it? So who are you signposting to? Who within your community? Have a listing of good support network around you. Connect with those people around you that you would potentially signpost a mother to, or a child to, or to get a diagnosis or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's
It feels
educate.
like it feels
Yeah,
like a really important thing for kids yoga teachers to have this knowledge, because we are at that kind of edge, and like you were saying before about the CAM support, and they're really overrun, aren't they? And so a lot of people will think, oh, just go to yoga, send people to yoga. Oh, the children seem to be having problems, let's get them to yoga. And so quite often we are meeting these children, these families, where they are experiencing trauma, and we maybe don't have the skills. So to me, that's why I feel it's important for this knowledge to be shared with kids yoga teachers. Do you have any other reasons why you think this is important information for kids yoga teachers?
because I think the bottom line is that most children experience trauma on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so every single child that comes to your mat will have had a build-up of some kind of trauma. And if we can create a really safe, supportive environment where children can feel understood, respected, and empowered, then that's a massive win, because they might not feel that in any other environment. We don't know the
Yeah.
family they're going back to. We don't know their experience in school, and children's lives are very limited. So we have a really, really good opportunity, and I feel a really, really important mission to create and foster a really safe environment that can teach them valuable life skills, self-regulation, emotional awareness, different various coping strategies, an understanding that they are not who they have been led to believe. They are not the lazy ones, the bullies, the ones that cause mayhem, the shy one, the whatever. We can strip that back, and we can see children, each one of them, for the individuals, for the beautiful beings that they are,
Yeah.
and we can tool them up for years to come, can't we?
Yeah, I think even in our relationships with them, even, you know, just by having a positive relationship, we can be the facilitator of so much change within themselves and help them to see themselves in a way that perhaps nobody has seen them before. And I think that happens a lot to kids yoga teachers, and I definitely have experienced that myself. You know, you get these nice little letters, or like they'll come up and give you a hug, or you know that in some way with your relationship with them, you've lit something within them. And I think, yeah, it's so powerful for you to be tooled with all of this knowledge about the psychology, so that you can do it in a safe way.
Yeah, I mean, you can be that one teacher that they remember for their
Yeah,
entire lives.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
just the biggest gift.
yeah, yeah. I actually had an email, really weird, randomly, from a child who I had not taught. Would have been like maybe 4 years that I'd not taught them. And they sent me an email just to say, hey, just wanted to say that I know I was a real pain in the ass in your, well, they didn't say pain in the ass, but I think they said a real pain in the bum or something like that in your lessons. But I wanted to let you know that you did really help me. And it's just like, I've not taught them for such a long time, but obviously something I did, you know, and they were they were a right pain, but they were, you know, I could see there was a reason for it. And there always is, isn't there? There always is a reason for our behavior. However triggering it is, there's always a reason. And
And for me,
maybe just,
that for me, when I dig into it, it's connection. It's the lack of
yeah,
connection. It's the lack of
yeah,
connection to self, and it's the lack of connection to the solid other in their world. Is if a child
yeah,
has just one adult, just one, they only need one anchor. That's it.
yeah,
That's it. And it could be you. It could be just you for that hour that you, or half an hour that you have them in a yoga
yeah.
class. That could be it. And that breaks my heart.
It's true,
But
isn't it, that it is just one. There's been research into it, hasn't there, about how you only need one person to have a positive relationship, and it can be really restorative and be healing, and it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. So I think we've already touched on it, but are there any things that we haven't mentioned already that you think kids yoga teachers can do to make their classes more trauma informed, that you can talk about on a kind of, you know, I don't want you to give away all of your courses,
yeah, oh,
but
the course is so in depth. It's just,
yeah.
as I went down and started writing it, it was like I was drawing upon 20 years worth of you know, my own
I get
experience.
like that.
This.
You're
Yeah,
like, I just include this, I just
yeah,
include this,
just
and it starts off being like,
yeah,
oh, I'm just gonna talk for 20 minutes on this, and then you're like
yeah.
an hour later, you're going, and another thing.
Yeah, but in order to understand this, you need to understand this. Yeah, so it is a deep dive, and it's great. And we're on a really lovely platform as well. We're on Mighty Networks, which is a really user-friendly platform to kind of navigate the course as well. I've only had really good responses from all of my students on that, because it takes a while to find a nice platform, doesn't it? So
It does. I'm writing that down.
yeah,
Mighty
Mighty
Networks.
Networks is great. You can have a little community and things like that on there, and you can pop your videos and things. But we have, so to recap, I reckon, to educate yourself first. How to create a more trauma informed class, you need to educate yourself. Different types of trauma, common triggers, coping strategies. There's already going to be a load that you know from your yoga teacher trainings, and from your life experience, but it's really good to get something solid, and an understanding. But it is a big subject, so we do need to come to this subject lightly. It's almost like, if you pick up a load of sand in your hand and you squeeze tight, you think you've got all the sand and all the knowledge, but the sand dribbles out of your hand. And it's like this subject is a bit like that. So it's on a really nice platform. You can come to it over and over again, because there's a lot of information in there. So really understand the effects of the body, the mind, the nervous system, connecting those dots on children's behavior, being able to kind of bring it back down to the core beliefs, what the core reason for their behaviors. Creating safe space is key. Looking at the environment that you are in, whether that's school or you're hiring a hall or things like that. So I do a real big deep dive on that, offering choices and modifications, but especially hands-off verbal cues. I really go into how important that is. I know that we see a lot of teachers manipulating bodies.
No.
But
Makes me cringe.
yeah,
I don't even like it myself.
no,
If
I hate it.
somebody, if I was in an adult yoga class and an adult came and touched me, I would jump and be like, that would ruin the whole thing for me.
I
I would
wouldn't,
leave the room.
yeah,
I wouldn't.
because it
No,
feels
thank
like
you.
I already feel like I'm doing everything wrong.
Yeah,
Even a non-competitive, activity like yoga, I'm now doing wrong. So that's what it feels like in
yeah,
a body, doesn't it? So we're focusing on sensation, not appearance, especially in the kids yoga. And
yeah.
more
It's
often
so
than
not needed. I don't
not,
understand why anybody would adjust. I mean, the only time I would do it is if I'd said to the child, would you like me to help you to balance, or would you like my hand, or, something like that? Because sometimes they do want to try
little
something
partner
but need a
pose.
little.
Yeah, little partner pose. But even then you can do it up against a wall, can't you? And
Yeah, yeah,
go out
yeah,
on a
yeah,
chair, you can grab a chair. But asking is key,
yeah,
is asking for
yeah,
consent on all of those on
yeah.
things.
Consent. I
And
mean, it's just,
yeah. And the children are never asked, are they? It's just like
no,
they're just dragged
no.
into
They are
post.
they are literally dragged. They are, sometimes that a teacher or an adult will grab their hand and pull them, and I quite often will see that and think, would it hurt you to say,
Yeah.
we're just going to go down here, do you want to come with me? You
Or
don't need to
when they
drag
come up
them.
from behind, they come up from behind the
Yeah,
toddler or baby and just whoosh up.
and sometimes you see their arms like,
Yeah.
what, you're kind of dislocating their shoulder. It's
Yeah.
just awful. Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
screeching. It's
I
something I
really
feel really angry about.
Yeah. Consent is really important. So if we ask for
Yeah,
consent around seemingly innocuous things, even like when my babies were babies, it was like, I'm going to change your nappy now. Is that all right? Because I'm
yeah,
doing something. And also facial cues, we're going right the way down to that. So we get a lot of new mums on our in our mats. And it's like, oh, and it's like that is you might think you're not doing anything, and the child is a baby and just going, but it's soaking up that this is disgusting. This isn't
yeah.
nice.
They're
This isn't,
picking all that up, and also like they're absorbing like, oh, I've made a mess for you,
yes.
and this is
Yeah.
something you're doing, you don't want to do it, and yeah,
All of that
it's in everything, isn't it?
it's in everything. But when we really focus on consent and we bring it into our everyday practice and our everyday lives, then when that child is a young adult or a teen or an adult, they will know they have body autonomy and they will
Yeah,
know what's right and what's not right for
yeah,
them. And they will not be people pleasing. Because remember, people pleasing is fawn response. It's
yeah,
it's it's a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Not very many people
mm,
know the people pleasing response is a trauma response.
yeah,
So we're now,
yeah,
because we're becoming trauma informed, we're now really connecting the dots on behavior. So it's more likely they'll be able to keep their boundaries and keep themselves safe when they're
yeah.
older.
That's why
Um,
choice is so important, isn't it? It's as simple as in relaxation saying, you may like to lie down, you may like to be on your side, on your front, you may like to sit. If you're sitting, you may feel more comfortable like this, you may like to close your eyes, all of those different options, so that they know that they listen to their bodies. And I think, we as adults, I definitely, I'm 45 now, and I'm still now figuring things out about myself and being like, whoa, I didn't realize this, because of this, I need to please, I need to do what I'm supposed to do. But no, actually, we need to listen to our bodies telling us, and listen to our own, have that sense of self and be like, what feels good for me? What does, this is a phrase that I say with my children quite a lot, is what does your body need right now? And I think, you need to say that to yourself and children. And I don't think we do as a society. We don't think, what does my body need right now? That's why we've got such a health crisis, because people don't know what they need, so they numb it out. And I'm not saying I never do this, because surely I do, we numb out with chocolate, or with, like, watching a screen, or complaining about something that is not really the actual issue itself. But we pick on all these different things and do all these other things because we don't actually, it's not safe for us to tune in to actually, what does my body need? What
We're
do I
trying
need?
to regulate, aren't we? The
Yeah,
bottom line
yeah,
is the amygdala's up, it's screaming, we're stressed out, cortisol's running, and that's our go-to. That's what we've learned regulates.
yeah,
And if we can swap out, I mean, so this is still a sticking plaster if we're swapping out a coping strategy, but it is a journey. This is a
yeah,
journey that we're doing. So we're swapping out a coping strategy, but really we being trauma informed means we're digging down deeper than that, deeper than the sticking plaster, down to the core reasons why we're stressed out. So why, as a
yeah,
parent, am I escalating a scenario rather than de-escalating? Maybe it's simply because you've given yourself nothing all day. You've
yeah.
jumped,
It's the awareness, isn't it? It's the
yeah,
awareness.
yeah, to work. You haven't even given yourself some water all day. You're strung out,
Yeah,
wrung out, and that you've got no capacity left. Your container's full. You've got no spoons. So it's like, you know, practicing self-care as a teacher, I think, is really super important to bring into your trauma
yeah,
class. Practicing self-care as a human is really super important, and respecting boundaries. So if we do this as the student, so doing this course as the student, and we bring that into play, then it's easier to navigate the bridge into being able to hold the space as a container for others to practice it, and to
yeah,
give tools that they need in order to practice their own self-care, giving them a voice. How many times does our children don't have the language really to say what they need. Us adults are learning to say what we need. And a lot of the time when we do ask for what we need, we're chastised as a child.
yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
you
so
know,
many things that I could say about that. Yeah.
yeah.
And shaming, and oh, it's just
Shut
really
down.
really unhealthy.
Really
So
unhealthy.
I could talk about this forever. I really could. I think it's I could talk for days. But tell us about the course.
Well, the course is everything that we've just spoken about, really. It's a real comprehensive course. We delve really deep into understanding trauma, understanding its, kind of its effects on the body and the mind, the nervous system. We dig deep on how yoga and mindfulness can serve as really good tools, how we integrate that into your teaching, um, practical strategies for creating trauma sensitive class environments, um, practical strategies for dealing with anybody in your class that's distressed, and or handling disclosure. I mean, a lot of children's yoga also incorporates like a family element of yoga that ours
Yeah.
does. So we have, caregivers coming. And over the years, I've had several women disclose, really full on experiences to me. What would you do in that situation? So I go into your edge, where your remit
Yeah.
lies, what you can and can't do, signposting. We go into depression, postnatal depression, post-traumatic stress disorder. We have a deep dive on mental illness, mental health that's happening now, that we're seeing now, and how we're not remedying it, we're helping alleviate some of the symptoms and
Yeah.
knowing that remit. We look at language, we look at trauma informed language, we look at direct commands, we look at something called clean language, which a man called David Grove created, and the fusion that we can use in our day-to-day classes, in our meditations. Our meditations can be super triggering. So
Yeah.
the kind of meditations that so in Wigglebums, I write all of our meditations, and I write it in a really trauma-informed, clean way, so that when someone is experiencing that interoceptive landscape for the first time, we're mitigating how much that could traumatize someone. What else? Yeah, I mean, it's
When does
just,
it when does it go live? Because is it online? Am I
yes,
right
it's
in thinking?
online. So we run something on Mighty Networks. I will be obviously sharing it in all of our yoga groups that we're all in. And so I'm just in the middle of recording it now. So the hefty manual's written, and I'm sitting there recording.
The recording stage,
I
and
know.
it's just I the amount of times when I do a recording and I'm like, oh no, I just blurted my words. And now if I'm doing like YouTube videos, I don't even edit them because I will never be happy with them. So I just record it and go. But if I'm doing for a course,
Yeah.
it's a lot, isn't it? So
Well,
I feel for you with that
yeah,
stage.
I'd hit. So I've got a really nice speaker now, a nice mic now. But in the early stages in COVID, when we were putting it all online, I'd had just it, and I leant forward and I turned my mic off. So
Oh,
I
I've had that
recorded
happen
2
before.
hours
Yeah.
with props, and there was no sound. So yes, I'm in the middle of that. But it's a great. I think, you know, it's just that thing of like every single person who works in the public sector, whether it's through this course or some other course, it's about it's about doing a bit of a deep dive. Everybody has been traumatized anyway, but since the COVID pandemic, we're seeing so much, absolutely so
Yeah.
much with the children and the teens, because obviously the teens were about 8, 9 when this happened. So they were
Yeah.
fully aware of what was going on, consciously aware of what was going on. The young adults as well. I'm seeing a lot in my own personal therapy practice, young adults coming. And that sense of safety was ripped from us, wasn't it? From all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And that impacted mental health on all sorts of different ways. And obviously, then that impacted family units, and then it's impacting individuals. So
Yeah.
this is a small nod to trying to help each teacher become more aware of who they've got coming to their mat, and maybe just through a slight change in language construction, sentence construction, a slight change in how we modify and hold verbal cues, and just is tweaking what we're doing so that we can hold and be that safe container for people that come to our mats.
Yeah, I love it. And so if anybody's watching this now and thinks, yes, I love it, I want to do it, where will they find the course? Where will they find more
So
information?
it will be on Wigglebums Kids Yoga website. Will be the place, and also Wigglebums. There is a Wigglebums dog thing, so you have to put kids yoga on there. Instagram and also Facebook, but I can share links with you and things like that. And once it
Love
goes,
it.
we'll do a big. It's gone live, quick
I'll share all of the stuff in the
thread.
I always do this. I'll share all of the links when you
Thank
send them.
you.
And yeah, but thank you very much for joining me, and thank you very much for this conversation, because
Thank you.
yeah, I really could talk about it forever, but I won't. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. And if you're interested in learning more about Wigglebum's trauma-informed practice for kids yoga teachers, check out all of the links below.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia. It was so
You're
lush.
very welcome.